So this is a reaction to episode 4 of 1899, and once again I'm going to try and go through it in chronological order, or at least what I can remember. And it certainly does appear to be the case that the episodes follow a particular pattern where we focus on one of the major characters at a time, and they basically are instructed to wake up. Once again, it's Mora who gives that instruction, and this time the character that we follow for most of the episode is the Frenchman Jérôme, the stowaway. So we learn a lot more about his backstory here, and of course the backstory of Lucien, because it appears that Lucien and Jérôme were in the French Foreign Legion together. They were soldiers together. Hence the medal that is left on the table by Jérôme. It's Légion d'honneur, I think, if I remember rightly. But anyway, we find that Lucien has basically stitched up Jérôme in order for him to come out of the situation as a kind of hero. And it appears that Jérôme is the sort of person who always does the right thing. We find that that's exactly what he does when it comes to the mutiny which has taken place on board the ship. He basically sides with the captain. So he's constitutionally inclined always to do the right thing, and is wounded in the process as well. We see more of the Daniel figure again. We see the door opening scarab at work, and yeah, that's something else I want to mention. I forgot to mention that last time. The door opening scarab. Okay, so we know it's not real. We know that it's some sort of CGI generated creature, but the bug is more than that. Because of its jerky robotic movement, it makes me wonder whether or not it is actually some sort of tiny robotic creature. That it's, in other words, that it's not organic at all. It's purely and simply a tiny little robot that is able to perform these feats, such as opening the door and leading the way and all the rest of it, the sort of things that it does. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So the other thing that we learn as well in respect of Lucien, and it's pretty much in line with what I was thinking when I spoke about episode number 3, is that he has epilepsy, some form of epilepsy on a particularly severe scale. And it was explained the little vials, the glass vials, contain potassium bromide, which I take it was used, or possibly even still is used, to treat epilepsy. Some form of stimulant, I don't know. But basically that's the drug that's mentioned. And it's also mentioned that that's why he can't get a hard-on, because that one of the side effects of taking that drug is that he can't get an erection. So that explains what happened earlier. Now, the actual mutiny that's taking place here, because this episode is called The Fight, although it could also be called The Mutiny. This has all been telegraphed quite some time ago. We knew this was going to happen. given the decisions that Captain Ike has already made about towing the Prometheus back to Europe. That was never going to go down well. And so everything's in motion now. And also, we've got the idea that's being propagated now that it's the boy who's responsible for the sudden outbreak of deaths on board the Prometheus. On board the Kerberos. And of course, the simple-minded religious fanatics are always going to be inclined to believe such a far-fetched story. There's the figure of Eben, the sort of matriarchal figure who's married to the sort of Danish Christian leader. She sort of comes into her own because she thinks the boy is some sort of agent of the devil, all this kind of nonsense. She'd have been up for, burn the witch and all that kind of stuff, in terms of the American experience in Salem. So when you've got a potentially volatile situation like that with people around with really incendiary views like hers, it's no surprise that things are going to fall into anarchy, which is exactly what happens. So now we've got two sort of groups fighting against each other. And the object of the exercise is to capture the little boy and eventually to sacrifice him, if you like. That's basically the aim of the mutineers. And we see again the figures of Jérôme and Lucien's wife drawing closer together. Clémentine, I think she's called, if I remember rightly. Sounds right. Yeah, I think it's Clémentine, something like that. So those two figures grow closer, and you see some sort of bond developing between them. And again, it begs the question about have they met before? It does seem to be the case. She does remember him in some way, and that's why they've grown closer. So, like I say, we see the outbreak of violence. We see, basically the mutineers going from cabin to cabin because they're trying to locate the boy. The boy is aware of the little passage, the little cubby hidey hole that's underneath the floor beyond the entrance, which has got the inverted triangle on it. And he's well aware of that, and he's actually hiding in there. But we also have another kind of déjà vu experience here, because at the end of the episode, the music. I mentioned earlier the music that's been used throughout. We had stuff from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. I was fully expecting something to come from the 1990s. But we didn't get something. We went back to the 1970s, I think, if I remember rightly. So I was wrong in that sense. But again, we've got music of that particular era being used. Don't Fear the Reaper was the piece that's used at the end of this episode. And yes, we get déjà vu because the boy's thrown overboard. Ostensibly, he drowns, but I didn't believe for one moment that was actually going to happen. I knew he'd be back in some shape or form. And no surprises. Later on, there's a banging heard behind the doors of a cupboard. Similar sort of situation to the way that he was discovered on board the Prometheus, except he's not actually locked in. And there's this kind of burst of energy as well, which seems almost as if he's been teleported there. But anyway, he emerges totally unscathed. He's not even wet. His clothing isn't wet. Clutching his little black pyramid. And when he emerges, he goes straight over to Mora and embraces her because she was basically trying to protect him, stop him from being thrown overboard by the mad Danish woman. So again, there's that connection that's established between the two of them, and once again it shows the kind of almost game-like nature of this program, which I've been stressing in previous videos. It does seem almost like a video game, in as much as where the characters are waking up at the beginning, it's like switching something on. It's like literally flicking a switch and off you go to do your thing. And all the stuff that's happening on board, that's all been generated by these other characters that I mentioned, people like France, for example, who are there for one reason and one reason only, to basically instigate things, to set things in motion, so that the other characters will interact with each other. So that's my brief account of episode 4, and it's playing out in the way that I expected, I think I could say. It's fascinating stuff. It's obviously getting more fast-paced now as well. This is much more of an action-driven episode. And by the time I get to episode 5, I think I'm halfway through. I can't remember if this is an 8-episode series or a 10-episode series. For some reason, my mind's gone blank on that. But anyway, I'm possibly halfway through, or nearly halfway through at this point in time. Still enjoying it enormously. Hopefully I haven't missed anything of any importance there. I don't think so. The captain does draw attention, does collar Mora at the end and basically say to her, "Why don't you come clean with me?" And he shows her the log, the passenger log, which has got her name on it from the Prometheus, but she doesn't remember having been on board the Prometheus. And that does seem genuine. It doesn't seem as if she's basically lying in any way. It's just that she doesn't remember it. But anyway, that's my reaction to episode 4 of 1899. And once again, all I'll say is I'm looking forward to watching the next episode. So watch this space.